includes our preschooling kids church, so please do wear a mask. It is still definitely running around out there, and there are still vulnerable people who we want to be able to feel like they can come to church. So, and welcome to those who are maybe a little bit unwell today and are joining us online. You are welcome as well. Cool. So there's lots going on soon and coming up in the calendar. So if you want to get your notebooks out, you're welcome to do that. But we are having a bunch of small groups in our wider community at the moment, and they're a really good opportunity to develop a closer relationship with a couple people that will really provide some value and some life-giving nurturing in your life. So do check out all the different available groups on our website. And there's actually a new one coming up, which is not on that slide. One of the other things we got going on is our worship korero. So if you are involved in worship any way, what shape or form, so even if you're just on the sound desk or if you are singing or doing the piano or whatever, that is for you, but it's also for anyone who wants to get involved in any way, shape or form. So that is Thursday, 2 weeks from now, on the 16th of June. So come along to that. There will be beer and pizza, which, you should just show up even if you don't plan on doing anything. Yeah, beer and pizza. So I think I know at least one person will be going. So go along and join in on that. Okay, another thing we got coming up is our Enneagram Workshop. Enneagram is a bit like a personality quiz kind of thing, but it goes a bit beyond that. It's more about how you relate to others and how others might relate to you. So it's a really good resource for us to work through and discover a bit more about ourselves so that we can kind of do this Christian community thing a little bit better with a little bit less spikiness and a little bit more soft edges. So RSVP to that on our website as well. Cool. So this is what I was going to talk about before. This is a new small group that is happening Wednesday, 29th of June, and I think it'll probably continue on after that. And it is soaking. So if you don't know what soaking is, it has nothing to do with water guns, but it does have a lot to do with worship and prayer. So if you liked our worship and prayer night last week, then you will most certainly enjoy this and come along. And if you don't really know what soaking is, do just go along and find out. I'm sure it'll be a great time. Cool. So if you want to be a give here, that is our bank account number. We also have an FPOS machine in the corner. Giving is super appreciated and definitely makes everything happen. Cool. Like I said, we don't have kids' church for preschoolers, but the rest of you are with me and with Carly. So I will hand over to Vic after you guys get to chat amongst yourselves, and he will wrangle you later.
So you just hang out together a little bit, say hi to your neighbour, catch up with someone you haven't seen for a bit, and bless you, bless you, bless you.
I looked and I was like, oh, it looks like this, all the other seats are taken, but nobody sitting in front of you.
Oh dear. I'm glad. I hope I didn't say anything really awkward there, because I certainly did some stuff that was awkward. So I'm supposed to do this soliloquy thing that seamlessly bridges the gap between worship, chatting here in church, and preaching. And I forgot all about you guys. But it has been a heck of a morning. Our worship team's been out with the Lurgs, so we've been worshiping to some beautiful recorded stuff that we've done during our lockdowns with Ellie Anderson, Ellie Budler, you may know her as, and so that was lovely. And then we just had a soaking time where we just relaxed and just in the presence of God with a song and with a bit of nature and all of that, and it was just so lovely. And there's a great crowd here today, and considering it's a holiday weekend, and so lots of chatting and happening is taking place around us. And so, yeah, stoked to be here and stoked to be part of your life today, even though I do feel a little off my game because I forgot all about you out there in Facebook Live. So, look, bless you guys. I'm so pleased to be able to be part of your Sunday. I'm going to be talking soon about our theme for term 2, which is together. A couple of things that Fraser said that you may not have got to. We've got great home groups that are happening. We've got a new one that's being launched at the end of June, sort of a soaking prayer and ministry one. On 2 Thursdays' time, Thursday the 16th, we're getting together anybody who's part of our worship teams or would like to be. So whether you're a soundie, whether you're an AV type person, whether you're a worship type person, we would love all be together. It's just be for an hour. We're going to gather around pizza and beer, and then we're going to just chat about kind of moving forward. And then there's the Enneagram Workshop, which is on Saturday the 18th. So it's only 2 weeks away. So important that you sort of do the booking coming up. So I think that catches you up with everything. And with that, I'm gonna find myself up the front and talking both to you and to them. So Matt Butler's laughing at me in the front row. So maybe that means I got away with it, or maybe it means that was that was terrible. So, oh dearie me. Welcome, 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 everybody. Come on back. Come on back. Come on back. Well done, everyone. Just do me a favour and don't look at our Facebook Live today. I know it's going to be such an amazing message. You'll want to think back to it, but you'll miss my complete botch of our Facebook Live. Handing over to the Facebook Live community, I've done a sort of a bowing and scraping and apologies to them, and so it's wonderful to be back together again. But I kind of something in the chaos of the morning, I missed that chip, and so here we are. So we're all back together again, and welcome to our people who are on our Facebook Live whānau. We would never forget you. You are just such an important part of our church. So there you go. Hey, it's a holiday weekend. We do have quite a lot of sickness. Miles is sick today, and he was leading our team today. And so we thought that was a great way to do worship. Wasn't it beautiful to be able to worship in that way? I do hope that touched your heart. And for those who've got our younger kids, we don't mind at all that they're in here with us, and they won't be listening to me. They can make as much noise as they jolly well like. I don't care at all. So I won't be thrown by it. Don't you feel nervous about it or anything like that. And I'm sure as a family we can cope with those, because obviously our preschool group is affected by being sick today. It's like this thing's going around apparently. It's like some sort of thing. I'm not sure what it's called, but it's just going around, isn't it? And there's holiday weekends. So you guys obviously didn't go away, so it's lovely to have you here. Thanks for coming. As much as we love you on Facebook Live and we'd never forget you, these guys are really important, because it is just so important to be here together as community, which is kind of what we're talking about in term 2. It's our theme. And as we thought about term 2 and as we kind of planned towards term 2, it seemed significant that circumstances have put us apart. Circumstances such as COVID, such as lockdowns, mandates, all of those things that we have been part of over our last 2.5 years. And it also seemed, and I think this is still true, that we're finding it hard to get back together again. It might be because we're nervous about, germs and stuff like that, or it might be just we were out of the habit, all sorts of things that would go around in our minds. And so as we thought about term 2, we thought we couldn't just say that was okay. We just felt like it's more important than ever that we're together. And so we've crafted this series that we're calling Together and we just add a word to it at the end of each one. And so right through term 2, more or less, we have this planned. And it seems like, it's a hard thing to be together, but the consequences of us not being together are worse than the consequences of us, making the effort to be together. And so we want to advocate for that and champion that and work towards ways that we can be together in this term 2 season. And one of the great inspirers, for me anyway, of anything that's talking about being community and together is a guy called Dietrich Bonhoeffer. And many of you know him. I mentioned him 3 or 4 weeks ago when we launched this series. But he's a German martyr, I guess, in the Second World War. And so his story will always be synonymous with the importance of us doing life together. In fact, his book is called Life Together, and it's a really significant book, not just in my life, but in the Christian community. And so in 1933, so 6 years before the war, Bonhoeffer was already an opponent of Hitler who'd come to power, I think, the year before. He did a famous radio address that was cut off in midstream. So this is 1933, a long time before the war, as he denounced Nazism and Hitler himself. He ends up in London, and he pastors a couple of German-speaking congregations over there. In 1935, he comes back to Germany and starts to train pastors in underground Bible seminaries and also public Bible seminaries. And in that time, he lives with a group of 25 vicars, and they learn about doing what he will call life together. And I forgot to get this. I think I've got the book here, but it's worth waving around if I can find it. That's another book that I'm reading. Reappearing Church. Where's Yvette? One of your fans, Mark Sayers, I'm reading at the moment. There you go. Bonhoeffer's deeper in my lots of books. So he comes back. He shares this house with these vicars, and he learns about and he teaches about the way that we can be together. In 1939, he ends up in the US, and he's teaching at Bible schools there. And of course, war's about to break out. It breaks out in 1939, and he's urged to stay in the safe West. Or not West, but outside of Europe, and chooses to go back into Germany and gets one of the last boats back, and he starts to preach, and he starts to be sort of a thorn, I guess, in Hitler's side. He does a lot of writing during that time, and he writes a lot on ethics, which is really interesting to me because he's part of a plot to assassinate Hitler. And so, you think for a pastor and a Christian and stuff, the ethics involved in that journey, which is just a fascinating story in itself. And then he's in prison in 1943. He ends up in various prisons, and he finally is on April the 9th, 1945. He's hanged in Flossenburg prison, and he becomes a martyr for the cause. So when I've read this book this week, or over the last few weeks, I've read it 2 or 3 times. It's a deceptively easy-looking book. It's only sort of a 90-minute, 120-minute book to read. But it takes you to places and depths. And there's always this sort of sense of, here's a guy who's going to practice what he preaches. I'm not sure that I'm going to practice what I preach, to be perfectly honest. It's like, I'm not sure that when push comes to shove, I'm going to be the one who sort of volunteers to take the bullet for any of you guys, because it's not proven yet, is it, sort of in the process. But when you read Bonhoeffer, it's like, here's a guy who says some things and goes through and follows it up and actually does it. And one of his famous quotes is this: when Christ calls a man, he bids him come and die, which is sort of a very, very challenging sort of idea and ideal, and what does it mean to us? And it probably wasn't just something that was for Dietrich, but it was also for something that he would want to pass on to us. So the book has quite a lot of specific and prescriptive things in it. I am going to get it because I think it's important that I wave it around. I know a few of you in church have told me that you're reading it at the moment, and so some others may like to as well. So it has quite a lot of stuff about prescriptive things about, worship and community and communion and community and, serving and doing life in community. So you can grab this on sort of Amazon or something like that. It's about $20. And so some of those things aren't probably that helpful for us along the way. But at the same time as that, it's just a devastating book because it takes you away from your own agendas and I guess your own selfishness in a sense that we have, and calls you to community in that sense, calls you to die, calls you to kind of give up your life, I guess, for faith and for those who are around you. And so at that, it's a very, very kind of challenging book. So when I read this book for the second time a couple of weeks ago, the second time in this sort of part of my life, I sort of thought, so I want to talk about this. I want to bring some of Bonhoeffer. And so I started my notes and I said, we're going to call it Together in Bonhoeffer, because he was the kind of inspiration for this message. But as I thought about it, I thought the thing that I think that this really is it's all about being together and whole. Without each other, we're not whole. Without each other, we're partial. Without each other, we're flawed, I think. Without each other, we're vulnerable and weak. And we could easily kind of find ourselves, kind of out in the cold and lost along the way. Because Bonhoeffer, contends for the sense of fragility but strength. There's the whole idea of, we're fragile, but we're stronger together. And he will make this case throughout his book and throughout his life and in prison and all of that. He will make this case for those things. And I'm really reluctant to compare where we're at in New Zealand in 2022 with Nazi Germany in the 1930s and 40s, because clearly they're kind of just on completely different scales. And when he says, he says, it's easily forgotten that the fellowship of Christians is a gift of grace, a gift of the kingdom that any day may be taken from us. And when he says that, it's like, well, this may be taken for us because we're a country at war, or we're a country, kind of the sort of apocalypse is happening, and it becomes a world war, as we know, and all of that sort of thing. And so when he says that, it's like it's pretty hard to equate that to where we are. And yet there's a little essence in me that thinks we are in quite turbulent and quite delicate times, kind of within faith and within church and within life at the moment. And I think, we would do well to heed his warnings, or we would do well to be inspired by his call for us to do life together. It's easily forgotten that the fellowship of Christians, it's a gift. What we have is a gift. It's a grace. It's something that God gives to us, a gift of the kingdom that any day that could be taken for us. And as I look around churches, I spend a lot of time with pastors. I'm a pastor, obviously, and so I spend time with pastors, and I have a role as principal of our Vineyard College in New Zealand. I spend time with pastors in relation to that. I'm a spiritual director these days, mainly to pastors, and I spend a lot of time with pastors. And I don't know of any pastors who are doing super well at the moment, to be honest, because church life is tough, kind of they're seeing it. And I don't know of many Christians who are doing super well at the moment because the absence hasn't helped us along the way. And so we do well, I think, to remember that we are fragile, so we can name fragility. So it's not like we're pumped, we are so pumped, and we're going to storm hell and all of those sorts of things. It's like we're fragile. We are fragile, but we're stronger together. We can get through this together. We can walk through this together along the way. I feel sure of that. And so he talks a lot about why we need each other. And it's like, why do we need each other? We're a pretty kind of disparate sort of group kind of thing. We're a pretty sort of mixed bag, aren't we? That's why I like the egg photo, some of us have got our tongue out the side, and some of us are, kind of, sort of happy, but there's nothing there sort of thing, it's just like, and that's all just me, sorry, there's none of you guys. But why do we need each other? Couldn't we just do it on our own? Wouldn't it be better? And Bonhoeffer talks about some of these things that are just so important. And I just want to pick four and just explore them for a few moments, and then I just want to talk a little bit about us as a church going forward. So he talks about the difference that comes with community, the difference between people who are kind of, I guess, of different ages, we could say, different stages of life, different stages of faith, different maturities, different, socioeconomic backgrounds, different histories, immigrants and, people who have been here forever, all sorts of things that are the result of the differences that we see, even in our band that are here today, of different ages, from, kind of the youngest child who's sitting here to the oldest granny who's sitting here. This is the sort of place that you can find those things. And he talks a lot about difference of different types, but he also talks about the weak. And he says the exclusion of the weak and insignificant may actually mean the exclusion of Christ. In the poor brother, Christ is knocking at the door. So there's something about those who haven't that is really important for us to be in contact with. And sometimes, every now and then, somebody will say to me, I want to start a group, but I don't really want to make the group public, sort of thing, because I just sort of want it to be among, kind of this group of people, sort of thing. We're gonna pray together and worship together and stuff like that. And I always say, that's a fantastic idea. You should start that group because it will be good for you. But don't for a moment think that that's the church, or don't for a moment think that that's, kind of what it's all about, or that it's something that is, kind of part of what God is doing. Because it immediately excludes somebody, immediately puts somebody somewhere else. And so this whole thing of difference becomes celebrated at that point. It's like the fact that, kind of, that we vote differently, or we take a different position on mandates, or we're struggling with different theologies and stuff like that. If we do it and do it well, with kindness and compassion, that can be a strength to us rather than something that says, I can no longer talk to you. as a result of that position that you had. That's what he's kind of having in mind that we will be able to do. So he talks difference. He also talks about celebration. I love this sense that we get to celebrate together as a church. So the full quote, it's not all up there, but it says, "It is the voice of the church that is heard in singing together." So the voice of the church that's heard. He says, it's not you that sings. It is the church that is singing, and you as a member of the church may share in its song. And I just sort of think there's something so much bigger than, I don't know, than Ali singing on a screen, or Matt and I singing in the front row, or some of you guys singing in seats behind, or something like that. There's something much bigger that together we are lifting, I don't know, kind of we're lifting our voice to heaven, or we're making a declaration to the world, or whatever it might be that we see. There's something so much bigger than this when we as a group together are whole, are able to worship together. He goes on, "Thus all singing that is right must serve to widen our spiritual horizon, make us see our little company as a member of the great Christian church on earth, and help us willingly and gladly to join our singing," and I love this bit, "be it feeble or good, to the song of the church." And it's kind of like, when we come together, be we feeble or good, be we able to sing in tune or we're not able to sing in tune, there is something bigger than all of us than when we do it alone. Oh, you can get much better, kind of worship if you go to Spotify or something like that in terms of its technical, brilliance and studio quality and all of those sorts of things. But lifting praise to heaven together, acknowledging God together, there's a power in that we are unaware of, I think, a lot of the time, but is really important and really significant for us. I think it's really significant anyway. And so around the world today, I love the fact that we get to Sunday first in New Zealand, more or less. But around the world today, we have joined this incredible global thing, which is the church, the people of God, singing to God, singing to kind of release, in a sense, our own selfishness, perhaps, to God who is love, that we may be kind of those who he's called according to his name, along with all of the different sort of eggs in that tray that is the church, that we will be singing with them. So I love that. Another is covenant that he talks about. And he talks about communion. He says the table of Christians implies obligation. He says, "It is our daily bread we eat, not my own." I love that. It is our daily bread that we eat, not my own. We share our bread. Thus, we are firmly bound to one another, not only in the spirit, but in our whole physical thing. The one bread that is given to our fellowship links us together in a firm covenant that he uses. I love communion. We do communion in waves in our church. So sometimes we do it every week, and it's a bit haphazard. I'd love to say it's sort of God says this or God says that, but it's not. We've taken a fair bit of flack over the years for doing communion, kind of intensely. It's like, are we becoming an Anglican church by doing communion? It's like, no. We are taking our place with 2,000 years of churches and something that's going to join us across different denominations in different parts of the world. This is magnificent because it's our bread. This is us together who are sharing in a common cup and a common loaf, so that we may be something together. That's the call of what, kind of what God has for us. And it's like, I can't be one with you if I can't be with you. We can't do this unless we're able to be together. That's what the call of Bonhoeffer is. And then finally, he talks a lot about reconciliation. Because who knows that living with people is actually pretty hard. Kind of the people that we love the most are possibly the ones that we tend to be the most irritated with. The people who we rub shoulders with the most, know the most about us, that we might have to apologize to the most often or whatever. But doing life together is something that's going to stretch us in these areas. And so Bonhoeffer again invites us to this sense of being together and of praying for each other and being there for each other. And so he says, "I can no longer condemn or hate a brother for whom I pray, no matter how much trouble he causes me." So when I pray for someone, I can't be out of sync with them. I can't hate them anymore if I'm praying for them. And he goes on, he says, "There's no dislike, no personal tension, no estrangement that cannot be overcome by intercession." And so there's something about this thing of being together that makes us have to have short accounts, makes us have to go there, makes us have to apologize, makes us have to kind of notice the impact that we're having on somebody maybe, and the detrimental impact that it's having. And so these things will all come together, and they will all contribute to making us whole. If we have more time, he goes on to 7 ministries he talks about in the book. He talks about the ministry of holding one's tongue. I love that. The sense of, kind of when we're in community, there's going to be quite often where we're just going to need to watch rather than sort of, blurt out. The ministry of meekness, not seeking ourselves. The ministry of listening, the power and importance of listening. The ministry of helpfulness, of serving. The ministry of bearing, Galatians 6:2, being a bearer of one another's burdens. Taking on, sharing what we're going through. The ministry of proclaiming, very gently, it's probably not a great English word in a sense for modern use, but it's kind of, helping speak into people's lives. But we do that against the background of those other things. And then finally, the ministry of authority, the sense that as servants together, we are ones who are able to kind of be under authority, I guess, and to receive authority along the way. And so if there's a quote that would sum it up for me, it would be this: we are members of a body, not only when we choose to be, but in our whole existence. We're members of a body, not only when we choose to be, but in our whole existence. Every member serves the body, either to its health or to its destruction. And so in these sort of delicate times, I guess, it's important for us to sort of be aware of some of the things that we can contribute so that, kind of Christendom or the church or whatever it is that is in this fragile place is able to go forward in the things that God has for us coming up from there. I remember this quite significant moment with my parents when I was about 10 years old. And I ended up, it was a Sunday morning, we were brought up Presbyterian. I'm not sure that we were a Christian family, but we were a church-going family. And my dad used to move with his job all the time, and so we would go to different places, different towns around New Zealand, different suburbs and different cities. And wherever we went, we would go to the Presbyterian church because we were Presbyterians. And I remember I was lying in my parents' bed on a Sunday morning, sort of somehow I'd ended up in bed with them, and we're going to get up and go to church. And I come up with the thing that no Breckle child has ever said in their whole life, no Isherwood child or anything like that, is I don't want to go to church because it's boring. Oh, I shouldn't say that while they're there. You would never say that because they're just so yeah. I think maybe that's been heard in Herald Island at some point, somewhere along the line. I thought I was the first person to ever dream up this, and I thought we'd never have to go to church again in our entire lives because I'd let my parents know that it was boring to go to church. And believe me, Patararu Presbyterian Church was pretty boring. You think boring, I can show you boring, mate. So it's like we go back to there. So I'm there lying in bed, and I'm thinking about the story, and it's like, do 10-year-olds lie in their parents' bed? Is that sort of a good thing? It was a healthy thing I hope they do. That's good. That's awesome. I'm so old, Janelle. Thank you for that. That's really good. And my dad, kind of really, really wisely, I think. And he said, in life, some things you do because they're right, not necessarily just because you want to. And something like that, we do it because it's right. And it's like, even as a 10-year-old, it made so much sense to me that we do it because it's right. It's not easy. It's not easy being in church with masks or, kind of with a sense of loss of people who aren't in church with us anymore or whatever. It's not an easy time to be around church at the moment. But I think we do it because it's right. I think we're better together. We're whole when we're together, and we're weaker when we're apart. And I just think that's a moment that it feels like I'm going against the tide. It feels like I'm actually going to get drowned, saying it because the tide is the other way. But I'm going to say it till the cows come home, sort of thing. It's like we're better together. It doesn't mean to say it's 10 o'clock on Sunday morning or that it's short Vineyard or whatever, but together is a really important thing for us at the moment to hold on to and to know about. I think it's just really significant, and that's why we're talking about being whole when we're together, being together and whole. And I think, if I reflect on us as a church, and I think I'm an optimistic person and I'm a positive person, but I'm not an unrealistic person or a rah-rah sort of denial sort of person of reality. The reality is it's quite hard at the moment. But on the other hand, we are in a point where we get to actually write something new and develop something that God might have that we would never have seen before. And it's like it's an invitation to make a difference for us at the moment. To kind of sort of say, I want to buy in to that or to whatever community you kind of feel like you're a part of. I think it's an opportunity for us to start something. My heart breaks for, for people who feel like, this, there are groups maybe within our church that are so thin that they might feel like they're their only one, and whether it actually kind of works for them anymore. And I think you're really right to think that and to feel that as a pain. There is an opportunity, though, to say, I'm going to meet and greet every single one of the people like me who come through the door from now on and actually start something new, as opposed to, be carried along by. So that's who we need. That's what we're looking for. Those are the opportunities, I think, that are before us. I think the worship night in a couple of weeks, this is the time. We are probably 3 or 4 worship leaders down that we had 2 years ago that we don't have now. And then when a worship leader gets sick, we go to the video. Well, it's the first time we've had to do that. But that's the reality of where we're at, so we can't hide that. It's not. I think it was beautiful worship. We'll continue to worship. We're committed to worship, not to having a team on stage. But nevertheless, if worship is something that is in your heart and you haven't, embraced for a while, now's the time to say yes to that because we have an opportunity to build something. And so come along. And anyway, I hear this pizza and beer, so it can't be a bad thing along the way. And Nerida thinks it's a good idea at least. So there you go. Enneagram, the things that we're doing, it's a great thing to buy into at the moment. I really want to encourage you to pray for us. Pray for me. Pray for Fran. Pray for our leaders, our board, in this time. And I think there's a number of people who've sort of almost taken me aside almost and said, how are you doing at the moment? And so it feels like there's a sort of a sense of, I recognize that this might be all that easy for you either. And so I'm supportive in prayer for you. And I want to say thank you to those who have prayed for us. This is a hard time for pastors, including this one. And so I really do appreciate your prayers and your encouragement in that. And I think, this whole thing of, hanging tough and not allowing ourselves to get separated is a really important thing that we can be, part of at the moment. I think that's where it comes back to that thing as we get to do it to its health or its detriment. Destruction might be too strong a word in the context of today, but in a sense that we do it because we do it to its health. I think that's a really significant thing. So Bonhoeffer dies. And this is the story of how he dies, not in terms of the blood and guts sort of thing, but this is the story of the end. Bonhoeffer was transferred from one prison to another, the Gestapo prisons in Berlin, Birkenwald, Schönberg, and finally Flossenburg. All contacts with the outside world were severed. His last weeks were spent with men and women of many nationalities, Russians, Englishmen, Frenchmen, Italians, and Germans. One of these, an English officer, wrote, Bonhoeffer always seemed to me to spread an atmosphere of happiness and joy over the least incident and profound gratitude for the mere fact that he was alive. He was one of the very few persons I have ever met for whom God was real and always near. On Sunday, April 8, 1945, Pastor Bonhoeffer conducted a little service of worship and spoke to us in a way that went to the heart of all of us. He found just the right words to express the spirit of our imprisonment, the thoughts and the resolutions it had brought us. He had hardly ended his last prayer when the door opened and 2 civilians entered. They said, Prisoner Bonhoeffer, come with us. That had only one meaning for all prisoners, the gallows. We said goodbye to him. He took me aside. This is the end, but for me it is the beginning of life. The next day he was hanged in Flossenburg. The text on which he spoke on that last day was, with his stripes we are healed. Such was the life and death of Dietrich Bonhoeffer, a teacher of the church in the highest sense of the word, a writer of profound theological and biblical insight, and yet close to contemporary life and sensitive to reality, a witness who saw the way of discipleship and walked it to the end. And it's like, it actually doesn't really matter. So many things don't really matter in terms of stuff. But in terms of the walk, in terms of the way that we live our life, in terms of the kind of being bid to come and die, that's the thing that God invites us in the good times and the hard times, and the sort of when on the mountaintop and when the mountains in our way and the valleys, kind of those things that we sang about earlier. And so those are the challenges that we have, and yet the great opportunities that we have. And I'm convinced, that we're better together. I'm convinced that together and whole is the way to go forward, as we go through from here. And so in our evening service at the moment, what we do is we gather into small groups at the end. We don't do that here because we do ministry at the end in our morning service. But here are some questions you might like to think about during the week. And these are possibly questions that in your home groups this week, your small groups, if you're gathering with a small group, that you might be asked, because we sort of share these among our home group leaders. And so what does Bonhoeffer mean when he says Jesus bids us come and die? What does that mean in 2022? It might seem really relevant in pre-war Germany, but what does it mean to us? How can believers today who are not living in community practice the ideals of life together? So the reality is we're not going to start a commune, or we're not going to start, let's all set up bunks here or something like that, and we'll all sleep together and stuff like that. I don't think that's what God wants the next day. And then who or where are you in our eggy together and whole image? Are you kind of the, one of those, or what would you draw on the face of your egg? Or are you in the box at all, sort of thing? Is there some meaning and some depth to explore on that? So we'll explore those tonight, and you might explore those in your home group. But I encourage you maybe just to be thinking about some of those things as you go away today. So what I'd love you to do is just to stand, and we're going to just close with some prayer, and we're just going to open the possibility that God, who loves us, is here to minister in our midst. And so let's just stand. And what I'm going to do after I pray is we're just going to have in the background that last song. So we're not asking you to sit with it unless you want to. You're most welcome to do. But I'm just going to ask you if there's an area that you would like some prayer, just to put your hand up. And it may be in relation to our message, or it may be in relation to something else completely. And I'm going to pray for you from the front. And if you're happy to leave your hand up, I'm just going to ask people around just to come around and pray. So we'll see how that goes. And so, we'll be able to minister together. So Jesus, I just pray that you'd come. You come right now into our gathering, into our room, into our hearts and into our lives. And Lord, we just position ourselves in a way, Lord, that you can come and meet us. I was just thinking, little Ewan, it is Ewan, eh? Little Ewan, who you might hear his voice as we're praying. And it just sort of occurred to me, he's got something to say to us, that little fella. And it's like, kind of what a life ahead. What a kind of a potential that is yet to be realized. And we understand that because he's just little, kind of there's so many things that he even yet has to do in the growing process. And yet what a potential God has in our midst for us to grow again. So God, I just pray for our potential. I pray for the things that you are, kind of yet growing, that are, baby-like in our lives. And yet with you, and we would just see that as being so beautiful, that baby-likeness. And yet as adults, we might feel like a bit embarrassed about that. But Lord, I thank you for for those baby moments that even you're birthing within us as a church and as individuals. And we pray, Lord, that you come and bring a new strength and a new understanding. So come, Jesus. So if we could just put on that video in the background, that'd be awesome, guys. And so is there anyone here, we're just going to take a few moments, but is there anyone here who would like me to pray for them? I'll just literally pray